Xander Lane never thought he'd be standing in a tuxedo that definitely wasn't his, holding the hand of a stranger in a white dress, while pretending to be her husband for a paycheck. His 5-year-old daughter, Mia, was the reason he was even in this mess. She was his whole world, bright, curious, and way too smart for a kindergartner. After his wife left 3 years ago, it had just been the two of them. Between juggling 3 part-time jobs and daycare bills, Xander was drowning. So when his buddy at the auto shop slipped him a card and said, "You want a weird but legal way to make 30 grand in a month?" he listened. The job, fake husband, fast cash, no strings, just sign a few documents, smile for some photos, and attend a few couple appearances. Xander didn't ask many questions. He couldn't afford to. But nothing about Braelynn Brooks was what he expected. The first time he saw her, she was stepping out of a black SUV in front of the courthouse, sunglasses on, a sleek white dress hugging her like it was made for her body alone. Her heels clicked with purpose, her chin tilted like she didn't bend for anyone. She looked like someone who had never worried about money a day in her life. "Mr. Lane," she said, voice smooth and calm. "I'm Braelynn, we're getting married today." "Right, yeah," Xander said, still trying to process what was happening. "Do you, always marry strangers on Thursdays?" A small laugh escaped her. "Only the handsome ones." The courthouse wedding was over in 15 minutes. No guests, just a judge, a signature, and a staged kiss for the camera. Xander kept it light, barely brushed her cheek, but her skin was soft, and for a second, something about it felt too real. Braelynn hardly looked at him after that. Her assistant handed him an envelope with half the agreed amount, and she left in the same SUV, barely saying goodbye. He figured that was it. But 2 days later, he got a call. "We need you at a charity gala. Tonight, black tie." Xander stared at Mia, who was coloring in her favorite unicorn book at the kitchen table. What even is a gala? At 8 p.m., sharp, a black car picked him up. He wore a rented tux that somehow fit like it was tailored, and his boots were polished so well he barely recognized himself. When he stepped into the ballroom, he felt like someone had dropped him into a movie. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, women in gowns that looked like they cost more than his truck. Then he saw her. Braelynn stood at the top of the staircase like she owned the building. Her dress was deep navy, her hair swept back, diamonds at her ears. She was talking to a group of men, their suits sharp, their eyes trained on her like she was the only thing that mattered in the room. He walked over, unsure what to say. She turned, her whole face changing in a blink. "There you are," she said, looping her arm through his. "I was starting to think you'd bailed." He leaned down slightly. "I almost did." "Why didn't you?" "Mia wants piano lessons, and I'm 3 months behind on rent." Her expression shifted just for a second. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. Instead, she pressed a quick peck to his cheek. "Just smile and pretend you adore me. Can you manage that?" He glanced down at her. "You're not hard to look at." For the next 2 hours, he stood by her side, answering questions with vague smiles and letting her lead the conversation. She introduced him as her husband, never fake, never temporary. Xander played along, but deep down, something felt off. Why did someone like her need a fake husband? It wasn't until their 4th appearance, together a corporate dinner, with a dozen executives from her company, that he finally asked. They were in the car, parked outside his apartment, Mia asleep in the back seat. Braelynn had insisted on sending a private driver because it looks more convincing. He turned to her. "Why me?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You're rich, you're powerful, you don't need a fake husband, so why pick some broke mechanic with a kid?" She looked away, her voice quieter than usual. "Because I needed someone real, someone who wouldn't want anything from me except the money offered." "That's all this is to you?" Braelynn hesitated. It was supposed to be. Before he could say more, she opened her door. "I'll see you next week," she said, and walked off into the night. Xander stared after her, confused. The next week, she showed up at the garage where he worked, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. She handed him a bag. "What's this?" he asked. She shrugged. "Just a few things for Mia. I saw this bookstore downtown, couldn't help myself." Inside were picture books, a plush unicorn, and a tiny sparkly backpack. He looked at her. "You didn't have to do this." "I know." And then she knelt down, met Mia's eyes, and said softly, "Do you mind if take you and Daddy out for dinner?" Mia looked up at him. "Can we go, Daddy, please?" He nodded, uncertain. That night, at a rooftop restaurant with white tablecloths and a view of the city skyline, Xander watched Braelyn laugh with his daughter. She wasn't cold or distant like she had been at the courthouse. She was warm, kind, funny. And when she looked at him across the table, something flickered in her eyes that made his breath catch. Maybe this wasn't just business anymore. Maybe she was falling for him. Xander adjusted the collar of his shirt, tugging at the unfamiliar stiffness as he stood outside the towering glass building that housed the headquarters of Braelyn's company. The invitation had come in the form of a courier-delivered envelope that morning. Inside, a sleek card embossed with gold detailing and a handwritten note that simply said, "I want you here." No explanation, no warning, just a time and an address. He'd arranged for his neighbor, Mrs. Carter, to watch Mia after school. She adored the little girl and had offered before, so it wasn't a hard sell. Still, Xander had hesitated, standing at his front door for a full minute before finally locking it behind him. Now he was here, and he wasn't sure why. A receptionist greeted him by name the moment he stepped inside, leading him to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. The ride was silent but smooth, the city shrinking beneath him as the elevator climbed. When the doors opened, he stepped into a penthouse-level office that didn't look like any office he'd ever seen. It was warm, not in temperature, but in atmosphere, sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows, a wall lined with books, a grand piano in the corner. A deep navy rug covered the hardwood floors, and abstract art dotted the walls. It didn't feel corporate. It felt personal. Braelyn stood at the window, her back to him, arms crossed. She wore slacks and a blouse that probably cost more than his whole closet, but her hair was down, soft waves brushing her shoulders. "You came," she said without turning. "Still not sure why," Xander replied, stepping inside. She turned then, slowly, like she'd been rehearsing it. There was something different in her expression today, less guarded, more careful. "I wanted to show you something." He crossed his arms. "You could have said that in the note." "I didn't want to scare you off." "You think I scare easy." "No," she said, walking toward him. "I think you're too used to people letting you down." Xander flinched just slightly. "What's this really about?" Braelyn walked past him and picked up a folder from her desk. She handed it to him without speaking. Inside were photographs of her, much younger, standing outside a tiny two-bedroom house with a woman who looked worn and tired. Other pictures followed. A teenage Braelyn stocking shelves, wiping down counters, wearing a fast food visor. "My mother raised me alone," she said quietly. "We struggled, badly, and when I built this company, I promised myself I'd never need anyone again." He looked up from the folder. "Why show me this?" "Because the first time I saw you with your daughter, I realized I was lying to myself." He closed the folder carefully. "You don't know me, Braelyn." "I know enough." She leaned against the desk, watching him. "I know you don't pretend to be someone you're not. I know you work yourself to the bone for your kid. I know you didn't blink when I offered you money, but you never asked for more than what was agreed. That kind of integrity isn't common." You're not exactly easy to read yourself. That's the point. I built walls so high, forgot what it felt like to be seen. Silence stretched between them for a few seconds. Then Xander said, "This still doesn't explain why you needed a fake husband." Braelynn looked down, her fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. My board was threatening to replace me. They've been circling for months, claiming I've lost touch, that I'm too focused on expansion and not enough on stability. One of them suggested that if I had a partner, someone grounded, steady, it might soften my image. "So you hired me to soften you?" he asked, the words sharper than he meant them to be. "I didn't expect you to matter," she said, her voice unsteady. "But then you walked into that gala like you belonged there, even though you didn't. You held my hand without flinching. You looked those people in the eye like you weren't afraid of them. And when you talked to my assistant's son about rebuilding his broken bike, you didn't even realize half the room stopped to watch you." Xander rubbed a hand over his jaw. "You want me to keep playing the part?" "No," she said. "I want to offer you a new one." He frowned. "What kind of offer?" She walked around the desk and picked up another envelope. "I've been working on a community initiative funding a chain of auto shops that also serve as training centers for low-income families. I was going to hire a director, but now I want you." His mouth parted slightly. "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a chance to do what you love, for real money, with full benefits and a daycare for Mia on site. I've already started the paperwork." Xander stared at her, completely thrown off balance. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're not a charity case," she said. "You're the kind of man I want running something that matters, and maybe, because don't want to stop seeing you." He folded his arms again, shifting his weight. "You're not used to asking for things, are you?" Braelynn's lips pressed together. "Not unless already know the answer." He stepped closer. "What if I say no?" "Then I'll find someone else for the job," she said, "but I'll still hope you say yes." Xander looked around the office once more, then back at her. "And Mia?" "She'd have her own space. Toys, books, a teacher who comes in during the day. I already met with one." "You're serious?" "I don't do anything halfway, Xander." He was quiet for a beat, then asked, "What happens to us if I take this?" Braelynn walked up to him, close enough that he could feel her breath. "That's not part of the job description. That's whatever we want it to be." He didn't say anything, didn't need to. The electricity between them pulsed in the silence. Then the office door opened, and her assistant leaned in, surprised to see them standing so close. "Apologies, there's a call from Tokyo holding for you, Braelynn." She stepped back instantly, straightening. "I'll take it in a minute." The door closed again. Xander turned toward the elevator, his heart racing. "I'll think about it." "I hope you do," she said softly. As the elevator doors closed around him, Xander realized he wasn't just walking away from an offer. He was walking away from something that might already be changing everything. Rain lashed against the windshield as Xander pulled into the underground garage of the sleek new building Braelynn had designed for the training center. It wasn't open, yet the grand launch was still weeks away, but she'd insisted he see it before anyone else. He'd left Mia with Mrs. Carter again, promising pizza and a movie night when he got back. She'd hugged him tight, told him not to forget the popcorn. He stepped out of his truck, boots echoing in the empty space, and made his way to the elevator where a security guard nodded and waved him up. When the doors opened on the top floor, Braelynn was waiting, holding 2 helmets under one arm. "I've got something to show you," she said, handing him one. "Please don't tell me you've started a motorcycle company too." "Not yet," she said, leading him through a side door and into a long hallway that opened onto a rooftop terrace. The air was cool and sharp from the storm, the city spread out below like a living painting. In the center of the terrace stood 2 sleek electric bikes, rain beating along their frames. I designed these in college. Took me 3 years to build the first prototype, she said, setting her helmet down. They're not for sale, just mine. You're letting me ride one. I'm letting you race me. He raised an eyebrow. You think I'm gonna let you win? I think you won't have a choice. They rode through the city, weaving through quiet streets slick from rain, laughter echoing between them. She led him to a hidden overlook, the skyline glowing beneath low clouds. They stood there in silence for a long moment, helmets tucked under their arms, the rush of adrenaline still burning in their blood. I don't remember the last time I did something just to feel alive, she said, her voice low. You're telling me board meetings don't give you a thrill. She looked at him, serious now. You ever wonder what your life could have been if one thing had gone differently? Xander leaned against the railing. Yeah, all the time. I used to think success would make me feel safe, secure, but the more I got, the more I realized how easy it was to lose everything anyway. What did you lose? She hesitated, then said, the man I thought I'd marry, he wanted me to walk away from the company, said real women didn't chase ambition. I told him to go to hell. Sounds like he couldn't handle a real woman. Braelyn laughed softly, then turned to face him. I've been thinking about what you said, about Mia, about all of it. I didn't expect you to become a part of this, not like this. So stop pretending I'm temporary. Her eyes locked on his. I don't know how to do this the right way. There's no right way, you just show up. You tell the truth, you stay. She took a step closer, her voice barely audible above the wind. I'm scared. So am I. Their kiss was slow, deliberate, unhurried, not like the one at the courthouse. This one was real. It tasted like rain and risk and something new. When they pulled apart, neither moved. I think we're past pretending, Xander said. The next morning, he brought Mia to the center for the first time. The building buzzed with final stage construction, glass being polished, equipment being installed, signage going up. Braelyn met them at the main entrance, dressed down in a soft sweater and jeans, her hair tied back. Mia clung to his leg, eyes wide. This is where you work now. Yep, he said, lifting her into his arms. And there's someone I want you to meet. Braelyn crouched down, offering a small, warm smile. Hi, Mia. I'm Braelyn. I've heard a lot about you. Mia stared at her. Did you buy this place? Kind of, but your dad's the one who's going to run it. Can I have a pink toolbox? Braelyn glanced at Xander. I think that can be arranged. They toured the space together, Mia marveling at the playroom, the indoor garden, the small library tucked into a corner. Everywhere they went, Braelyn watched Xander with something new in her expression. Not admiration, not desire. Something deeper, something rooted. Later, after Mia had been scooped up by Mrs. Carter again for an early dinner, Xander stood in the glass-walled office that would be his. Braelyn joined him, coffee in hand, the city turning golden behind her. You built this for someone who doesn't exist, he said. No, I built it for someone who could. He turned to her, and what do you want now? She didn't answer at first, just walked to the desk and placed a hand on the wood. I want to stop hiding behind plans. I want to take a chance. On me. On us. He stepped forward, took the coffee from her hand, set it aside. Then do it. No contracts, no performances, just you and me. Braelyn reached into her pocket and pulled out the original marriage certificate. The one they'd signed weeks ago without meaning a word of it. I had it annulled, she said. I thought I was doing the right thing, cleaning the slate. And now, I'm ready to sign it again, for real this time. Xander didn't speak. He just reached out, wrapped her hand in his, and held it there. No pretending, no lies. just the beginning of something real. The scent of fresh cut flowers filled the glass atrium at the base of the new training center, where rows of chairs had been arranged beneath strands of soft hanging lights. Outside, dusk settled over the city, painting the skyline in shades of amber and steel. A string quartet played low in the background, their music winding through the quiet hum of guests gathering. Xander stood in the narrow prep room just off the atrium, adjusting the cuff of his shirt beneath a tailored navy jacket. He hadn't rented this one. Braelynn had sent it over in a garment bag earlier that morning, accompanied by a handwritten note that simply said, "Wear this. Picked it for you." He could still hear Mia's voice from earlier, bouncing through the hallway as she danced in her new shoes, her dress swishing with every step. "I get to throw flower petals. Real ones," she'd shouted, twirling until she was dizzy. Now, standing in front of the mirror, Xander let out a slow breath. He wasn't nervous, not about the ceremony, not about the future. He felt steady, present, like every choice that had led him here had finally aligned into something solid. The door creaked open and a familiar voice called softly, "You decent." Xander turned to see Braelynn's assistant, Alyssa, poking her head through the door. She wore a slate gray dress and held a small envelope. "She wanted you to have this before everything starts," Alyssa said, stepping inside. "Said it's not a letter, just something you should read now." Xander took the envelope and nodded. "Thanks." After Alyssa left, he slipped his finger beneath the flap. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, and in Braelynn's clean, deliberate handwriting, it read, "I used to believe love was something that waited until everything else was perfect. You made me see that it's what helps you survive the imperfect. No more contracts, no more pretending, just us. I'll meet you at the end of the aisle for real this time." He folded the paper carefully, tucking it inside his jacket pocket. As the music shifted, signaling the start of the ceremony, Xander stepped out into the atrium. The crowd was modest close friends, a few of Braelynn's colleagues, and the small crew of mechanics and trainees who'd helped bring the center to life. Mia stood near the front, her hands gripping a small white basket, her face lit up with excitement. And then the doors opened. Braelynn stepped forward, her dress a soft, ivory silk that moved with her like water. She wore no veil, no elaborate jewelry, just a simple gold bracelet, and the kind of calm confidence that made people turn and keep watching even after she'd passed. As she walked toward him, her eyes never left his. "I thought you'd run," she said quietly once she reached him, her hand sliding into his. "I told Mia we'd be home for cake tonight. She takes promises seriously." The officiant began to speak, but Xander barely heard the words. All he could focus on were Braelynn's fingers tangled with his, the curve of her mouth, the way her chest rose with each breath. When the time came to exchange vows, she didn't use notes. "I've built empires," she said, her voice steady, "but nothing felt permanent until you. You taught me what it means to be chosen not because of power or image, but because of quiet moments. Laughter in a kitchen, a child's drawing on a fridge. You made me want things I used to think were distractions. You made me want a life." Xander cleared his throat, suddenly aware of every pair of eyes on him. "I didn't think I belonged in your world," he began, "but you never asked me to change. You just made space. You gave Mia more than comfort, you gave her joy. And you gave me something I never expected to find again. A reason to believe in more." When the officiant gave the prompt, they both said "I do" without hesitation. Their kiss was longer this time, deeper, and filled with the quiet weight of everything they'd been through. When they pulled apart, the applause rose, but Xander didn't hear it. He was too busy watching Braelynn's face as she smiled, not the polished one she gave at galas or press conferences, but the real one. The one that crinkled at the corners of her eyes. The one she only gave him. Later that evening, the rooftop of the center had been transformed into a reception space, string lights zigzagging overhead, tables decorated with deep blue linens and arrangements of white tulips and eucalyptus. Mia sat at the head table between them, a chocolate cupcake in each hand, completely unaware of the dignitaries and investors who mingled just feet away. Braelynn leaned in close to Xander as a slow song began to play. "You were right about the dance floor," she said. "It's the best part of the entire building." He stood and offered her a hand. "Then, what are we waiting for?" They danced beneath the lights, her head resting against his shoulder, his hand firm at her waist. Around them, laughter rang out, glasses clinked, and the city shimmered. As the song came to an end, Braelynn pulled back just enough to look up at him. "I have something for you," she said. Xander raised an eyebrow. "You've already given me a job, a building, and a new suit." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small key. "What's this?" "The apartment upstairs, above the center. Had it renovated, 3 bedrooms, big kitchen, balcony with a view. It's yours, ours if you want it." He stared at her, stunned. "I didn't want to build a future without making room for yours," she added quietly. He took the key, turning it over in his palm, then looked at her. "Let's go home." Braelynn smiled, her eyes bright. And together, they walked back inside, where Mia was already trying to convince the band to let her sing. Xander scooped her up, twirling her once before planting a kiss on her cheek. Braelynn reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. No contracts, no performance. Just 3 people, bound not by necessity or image, but by something far more dangerous and infinitely more powerful. Love that had been chosen, earned, and finally allowed to stay. The morning sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of the new apartment above the training center, casting long golden lines across the hardwood floor. Braelynn sat on the edge of the balcony, barefoot, a steaming mug of coffee cradled in her hands. Below, the city stirred to life, but up here, it was quiet, the kind of quiet she had never let herself want before. Behind her, Xander stepped out of the bedroom, his shirt wrinkled from sleep, his hair tousled. He stretched once, then crossed to her, placing a kiss at the curve of her neck before sitting beside her. "I still can't believe we live here," he said, his voice husky from sleep. "I keep thinking someone's going to knock on the door and tell us it was all a dream," Braelynn replied. "You'd think that after everything we've pulled off, we'd start believing in good things." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I don't think ever believed in permanence until you." He didn't answer with words. He just reached for her free hand and held it, letting the silence wrap around them like a second blanket. Later that day, the training center hosted its official opening. Streamers hung from the steel beams, and the parking lot buzzed with energy. Families arrived with kids in tow, music played from rented speakers, and volunteers handed out toolkits and branded T-shirts. Braelynn wore a soft green blouse and wide leg trousers, her heels traded in for suede flats. She moved through the crowd with purpose, but her hand found Xander's whenever they crossed paths. At noon, she stepped onto the small stage, set up near the entrance to give her speech. This center was designed to give people a place to rebuild skills, confidence, and community, she said. But what I didn't expect was how, in the process, it would rebuild me too. She looked toward the front row, where Xander stood with Mia, both of them watching her. When her gaze caught his, something in her voice softened. "I spent my life thinking success was about never needing anyone, but real power is in partnership, in love, in choosing people who choose you back." The crowd applauded, but Braelynn only saw the quiet pride in Xander's eyes. That was her reward. After the ribbon cutting, Mia tugged at Xander's sleeve, her voice bright. "Can I show Braelynn my library?" Braelynn knelt down to her level. "You mean our library?" Mia beamed and took her hand, pulling her through the building with all the excitement of a museum tour guide. Xander followed behind, watching them, his heart full in a way he never used to understand until now. That evening, after the last of the guests had gone, and the staff had trickled out with tired smiles, Xander and Braelynn lingered in the garage bay. The overhead lights cast a warm glow over the polished concrete floor. He was wiping grease from his hands after helping a teen fix a stuck gear in the demo area, and she leaned against the workbench, watching him. "You looked good today," she said. He tossed the rag onto the bench. "You looked like you own the world." "That's not what I want anymore." He stepped toward her, drying his hands on his pants. "What do you want?" She hesitated for a breath. A family that doesn't disappear, a life that isn't just measured in quarterly earnings. All of it. He cupped her cheek, brushing his thumb along her jaw. "Then let's have it." They kissed in the middle of the garage, surrounded by the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scent of oil and rubber. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't choreographed, but it was theirs. Months passed, and autumn settled over the city in a burst of gold and crimson. The training center thrived. Families enrolled in programs, single parents got certified, and teens who had never held a socket wrench began apprenticeships. Xander's name became known not for being Braelynn's husband, but for the way he ran the place with heart, integrity, and a quiet kind of strength that people trusted. Braelynn took fewer flights. She started handing off more of the corporate responsibilities to her executive team, not because she was losing interest, but because she'd finally found something worth being present for. One evening, as they sat on their balcony with mugs of cider and blankets around their shoulders, Mia climbed onto Xander's lap with a school paper in hand. "I wrote about our family," she said proudly. "We had to say what makes it special." Braelynn took the sheet and read aloud. "My family is special because we built it ourselves. We didn't come from the same place, but we found each other. My dad fixes things, but Braelynn makes things. I think I want to do both." Braelynn's voice wavered slightly at the end. She cleared her throat and looked at Xander. "She's going to be dangerous when she grows up." "She already is," he replied. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia curled between them, her head on Braelynn's lap, her feet tucked beneath Xander's arm. The world outside kept turning, but up here, time slowed. Braelynn looked down at the girl she hadn't given birth to but loved like she had, then over at the man who had changed everything without ever asking her to change at all. "I never thought I'd get this," she said. "You didn't get it," Xander replied. "You earned it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Let's never let it slip away." "We won't," he said. "Not a chance." And they didn't. Not through the long winters or the busy springs, not through disagreements over Mia's bedtime or which shade of gray to paint the kitchen. They chose each other over and over through the chaos, the quiet, and everything in between. Because when you build something together, from the ground up, with open hands and open hearts, it doesn't break. It holds,